Known as one of the most scheming mother-son duo in British history, the story of Lady Mary Villiers and her son George, whose scandalous affair with King James I ignited a political and romantic saga that has been retold in the highly anticipated TV show Mary and George. The show dramatizes the twists and turns of their lives at the royal court while chipping in some historical events. It is generally based on the Benjamin Woolley's book The King's Assassin, The Fatal Affair of George Villiers and James I. We'll delve into their fascinating life story between truth and a bit of dramatization. Thought to have been born in 1570, Mary was the daughter of Anthony Beaumont, a squire from Leicester. Lacking wealth or prestige, she took on the role of a lady-in-waiting to a more affluent relative during her adolescence. It was during this period that she wed her first spouse, George Villiers, an English knight, gentleman, and sheep farmer who was also her cousin. George already had 6 children from his first marriage and had 4 more kids with Mary. The couple had 1 daughter, Susan, and 3 sons, John, George, and Christopher. After the death of her first husband in 1606, Mary remarried the much older yet wealthy nobleman William Rayner. However, this marriage was short-lived as William was severely ill and died 2 years later. Much worse for Mary, Rayner had left his entire estate to his only daughter Elizabeth, leaving Mary and her children with nothing. And this is where the show hits off after the death of Mary's second husband. Mary Villiers was left with little financial means. However, as a highly ambitious woman, she sought for a way to improve her family's situation. A few months after her second husband's death, Mary went on to marry Sir Thomas Compton. With the newly earned means and connections to the crown through her new marriage, Mary was able to send off her second oldest son George to France for a broader education. George stood out from an early age with his looks and charm, and his mother saw great potential in him. In France, he redefined his skills in horse riding and dancing, becoming an adept at courtly life. Now, all that was left to do to gain influence at the English court was for George to earn the favor of King James, who had a weakness for good-looking men as his advisors. Thanks to his new stepfather's brother connection to the king, George was able to catch the king's attention during a hunt in 1614. The timing was perfect, as the king's actual favorite Robert Carr, 1st Earl of Somerset, was starting to lose the king's interest. Fellow courtiers regarded him as overbearing and easily swayed by influences from Scotland. After 8 years of being in power, Somerset fell out of favor and was eventually imprisoned for his involvement in a poisoning scandal. After Somerset's downfall, the Villiers family's scheming machine went into full force. George was appointed as royal cupbearer in 1615 and was knighted as Gentleman of the Bedchamber the same year. This position allowed him to form a close bond between George and the king, as they frequently enjoyed hunting together. Over the next decade, his titles advanced from Viscount to Earl, eventually culminating in his appointment as Duke in 1624. Leveraging his charm and court connections, George was not only able to gain wealth and status for himself, but also for his entire family. While George stood on the forefront, his mother Mary navigated high society through strategic connections and intriguing. She was majorly involved in the marriage negotiations for her son George to one of the wealthiest noblewomen in England, Lady Catherine Manners. Despite great resistance from both Catherine and George, the couple was married in 1620 and eventually had 4 children. This was a major success for the Villiers family, as Catherine's family technically ranked way above them. Moreover, Catherine was said to be a gentle, compliant woman, which made her a perfectly pliable chess figure for the Villiers family. Meanwhile, Mary also climbed the social ladder, forming a powerful friendship with the Countess of Salisbury and becoming a confidant to the king. Her frequent and sometimes startling appearances at court led George to request his mother to reduce her visits. Nevertheless, she achieved the title of Countess of Buckingham in 1618, signaling her family's newfound prominence and wealth. In the series Mary and George, the complex and intimate relationship between George and the king is portrayed quite blatantly. However, the true nature of their relationship wasn't as openly flaunted. While George and King James never openly admitted it, there are indications that their relationship had a romantic aspect. Many intense love letters between James and George are preserved, in which James affectionately referred to George as his sweet child and wife, and George names himself as James' most humble slave and servant. Moreover, a secret passageway between the two men's bedchambers was found at Apethorpe Palace, James' favorite residence. Although King James was married to Anne of Denmark and had several children with his wife, he was known for his close relationships with male favorites, which has historians discussing what the true nature of those relationships was. Despite their strong personal bond, a rift began to form between King James and George over time due to diverging political ambitions. To strengthen his position, George took on the role of mentoring James' son Charles, the future king. Following tensions between England and Spain and a failed marriage alliance between Prince Charles and Infanta Maria in 1723, George pushed for military action against Spain. The king, however, prioritized maintaining peace. Around the same time, King James' health deteriorated, leading to his death in March 1625. The king's death sparked rumors suggesting that George may have poisoned the king to focus on Charles and advance his own war agenda. With Charles ascending the throne, George initiated several military campaigns against Spain, but all of these ended in disaster, resulting in impeachment proceedings against him, though King Charles intervened to protect him every time. Still, George's reputation was severely damaged. Despite all his failures, he was keen on launching a military expedition into France in 1628, which was faced with a violent backlash when an angry crowd of sailors besieged his carriage in Portsmouth. In a desperate attempt to escape, he resorted to violence to disperse them. The tension escalated when on August 23, 1628, John Felton, a disgruntled lieutenant to whom George owed money and had denied a promotion, attacked and killed him with a dagger at the Greyhound Inn. Felton confessed to the murder on the spot and was subsequently hanged that November. George Villiers, 1st Duke of Buckingham, was only 35 years old at the time of his assassination. The remains of the Duke were brought back to London, where King Charles mandated a burial within the chapel of Henry VII at Westminster Abbey, an area typically designated to royalty. His mother Mary was said to have reacted stoic towards the news of her son's death, maybe to save herself from repercussions due to her son's unpopularity. She passed away 4 years after his assassination on April 19, 1632, and was interred in Westminster as well. Although both mother and son could not maintain their influence indefinitely, their substantial impact on the monarchy, their accumulated wealth, and dignified burials highlight the success of their scheming. The mother-son duo is remembered as one of the most notorious in history, but in all honesty, they seem to have been very successful with their plotting despite their humble background.